Elena Martinez scored 198 points in fast money, 1 point away from $20,000. When Steve Harvey read the final total, her hands went to her face, and she dropped to her knees on the Family Feud stage. The audience erupted in sympathetic applause, assuming she was devastated about losing by a single point. But Elena wasn't crying about the money. She was crying because for 30 seconds she didn't have to pretend anymore. Because the $20,000 wasn't for a vacation or a car or home repairs. It was the exact amount her insurance company said they wouldn't cover for her 8-year-old son's experimental treatment. And for 30 seconds, as Steve Harvey stood there holding that card with 198 written on it, Elena Martinez let herself fall apart in front of 12 million people. Steve opened his mouth to say something. Nothing came out. He tried again. Still nothing. The studio fell completely silent. It was March 14, 2019, at the Family Feud studios in Atlanta. A Thursday afternoon taping, the third show of the day. The Martinez family faced the Chen family in what the producers thought would be a standard episode. Elena Martinez, 34, worked as a night shift nurse at Grady Memorial. Her husband, David, taught middle school science. Their 3 kids sat in the family section wearing matching blue shirts. The oldest, Christopher, age 8, had drawn a good luck sign on poster board. He held it up every time his mom answered a question. Nobody in the studio knew what Elena had been carrying for the last 9 months, but nobody in that studio knew what was about to happen. The Martinez family had won the main game 387 to 201. Standard family episode energy, lots of laughter, a few good answers, one hilariously wrong answer that got 200 people howling. Elena and her sister Monica went up for fast money. Monica went first and scored 113 points. Solid. Elena needed 87 to win. She got through all 5 questions with time to spare. Steve read the answers back. Each one scored higher than expected. The math was adding up fast. By question 4, the audience started buzzing. Question 5 sealed it. 198 points total. 1 point short. What the cameras didn't show was the 9-month nightmare that had brought Elena Martinez to that stage. It started the previous June, when Christopher began complaining about headaches. Not regular kid headaches, the kind that made him vomit, the kind that woke him up at 3 a.m. crying. Elena took him to their pediatrician on a Monday. By Friday, they were sitting in a pediatric oncologist's office at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. Diffuse intrinsic pontine glioma, DIPG, a brain tumor that grows in the pons, the part of the brain that controls breathing, heart rate, swallowing. Inoperable because of its location. The 5-year survival rate was less than 1%. Christopher had maybe 12 months. But there was a clinical trial at Duke University, a new immunotherapy approach that had shown promise in 14 kids. Real promise. 3 were in complete remission. 8 others were stable. The trial was accepting 5 more patients. Christopher qualified. The treatment wasn't FDA approved yet, which meant insurance classified it as experimental. Elena's insurance company, the same one she'd paid premiums to for 11 years without missing a month, sent the denial letter on July 18th. Treatment deemed experimental and therefore not covered under your policy. The appeals process took 90 days, 3 denials. Each letter used the same phrase, not medically necessary. Her son was dying, and the treatment that could save him was not medically necessary. The Duke trial required $20,000 up front, non-refundable, to cover the first month of treatment while they processed the research grants and pharmaceutical company assistants. $20,000 they didn't have. Elena picked up extra shifts. David started driving for Uber after school. They opened a GoFundMe that raised $3,400 in 2 months. Elena's parents mortgaged their house and gave them $8,000. They sold both cars and bought one used Honda. They were at $14,600, still $5,400 short, and Christopher's symptoms were getting worse. Elena started lying to Christopher about why they weren't starting treatment yet. "The doctors are getting everything ready, baby. Soon." Christopher would ask every night before bed, "Mama, when do I go to Duke?" And every night Elena would say, "Soon," and then go to the bathroom and sob into a towel so he wouldn't hear. David found her one night sitting on the kitchen floor at 2 a.m. with all the medical bills spread around her. She was trying to find $20 that didn't exist. He sat down next to her, and they just stared at the papers. Neither of them said anything. There was nothing left to say. What she said next would change everything, but not how anyone expected. Christopher's teacher, Mrs. Patterson, had a sister who worked in production at Family Feud. Long shot, desperate shot. Elena sent an email explaining the situation. 3 weeks later, the Martinez family got the call. They were flying to Atlanta. Elena told Christopher it was a surprise trip. She told him they were going to be on TV. She told him his poster would be on camera. She didn't tell him that she was playing a game show for his life. She didn't tell him that she'd been practicing fast money questions in the bathroom mirror for 2 weeks. She didn't tell him that she'd memorized the top 5 answers to 200 common Family Feud questions, because $20,000 wasn't just money anymore, it was oxygen. It was time. It was the difference between "we tried everything" and "we never got the chance." The hidden burden section had revealed the 9-month collapse, the system failures, the denials, the lies Elena told her son. Now came the moment that would break her, and 30 seconds later, it would break Steve Harvey too. After Monica's 113 points were revealed, Elena walked to the other podium. Steve asked his standard questions. "You nervous?" Elena nodded. "We're playing for $20,000 today," Steve said. Standard line. He said it every episode. But Elena's face changed when he said the number. Steve noticed. He paused. "You okay?" Elena nodded again, but her hands were shaking. The audience thought it was normal game show nerves. Steve would later say in an interview that he knew something was different. "Her eyes looked like she was drowning," he said. The clock started. Steve read the questions. Elena answered. Fast. Confident. She'd practiced this. Name a piece of furniture people sleep on besides a bed. Couch. Name something you'd find in a hospital. Doctors. Name a flavor of ice cream. Vanilla. Name something people are afraid of. Spiders. Name a reason you'd miss work. Sick. Buzzer. Time. Elena walked back to her family. Christopher was holding up his poster, bouncing with excitement. David had his arm around their youngest daughter. They all looked so hopeful. The audience thought that was the peak. They were wrong. Steve started reading the answers. Each ding of the board brought more points. 23, 31, 28, 39. By question 4, Elena realized they were close. Really close. Question 5. Name a reason you'd miss work. You said sick. Ding. 77 people said it. The board showed 198. 1 point short of 200. 1 point short of $20,000. The audience gasped. That collective, "Oh!" that happens when someone loses by the smallest margin. Steve looked at the card, looked at the board, looked at Elena, and that's when Elena Martinez stopped holding it together. Her hands went to her face. She dropped to her knees, not gracefully, not TV-ready. She collapsed. Her sister Monica ran over. David jumped from the family section. Christopher stood there holding his poster, confused. "Mama?" The studio fell completely silent. Steve took a step toward Elena. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. He looked at the producers off stage. They were frozen too. This wasn't normal, lost by 1 point emotion. This was something else. Steve tried to speak again. Still nothing. He just stood there, microphone in hand, as Elena sobbed on the floor of his stage. 30 seconds. That's how long Steve Harvey, a man who'd hosted Family Feud for 9 years, who'd done over 1,000 episodes, who always had something to say, stood completely silent. The audience didn't move. The cameras kept rolling. Somewhere in the control room, a producer whispered, "Do we cut?" Nobody answered, because nobody had ever seen Steve Harvey unable to speak. David had reached Elena by then. He knelt beside her. She was saying something nobody could hear. The microphones barely picked it up. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, baby. I'm so sorry." She wasn't talking to David. She was talking to Christopher, because she'd just lost her son's life by 1 point on a game show. That's what she was thinking. That's what was breaking her on national television. But Steve wasn't done. He walked over to Elena, knelt down beside her and David. The cameras caught everything. "Hey," Steve said quietly, "look at me." Elena looked up. Her face was destroyed, makeup running, eyes red. "Talk to me," Steve said. "Tell me what's happening." The producers were frantically signaling to cut to commercial. Steve ignored them. "Tell me," he said again. And that wasn't even the part that made Steve cry. Elena told him, right there on the floor, with the cameras rolling and 200 audience members watching, and Christopher standing 15 feet away holding his poster. She told Steve about Christopher, about DIPG, about the 12-month prognosis, about Duke, about the $20,000 they didn't have, about the insurance denials, about the lies she'd been telling her son, about how she thought Family Feud was their last chance, about how she'd just failed him, about how she'd lost his life by 1 point. She told Steve everything. And when she finished, Steve Harvey closed his eyes and took a breath that made his whole body shake. "Stop everything," Steve said. Not to Elena, to the producers. "Stop the show. Stop the cameras. Stop everything." A producer's voice came over the speaker. "Steve, we're on a schedule." "I said stop everything," Steve said again, louder. "I don't care about the schedule. I don't care about the next taping. Stop everything." The studio fell completely silent again. Steve stood up. He was still holding his microphone. His hand was shaking. "In 9 years of hosting this show," Steve said to the audience, "I have never stopped a taping. This is the first time. And I'm stopping it because—" His voice cracked. He paused, tried again. "Because 20 years ago, I was living in my car. A 1976 Ford Tempo. I showered in gas stations. I ate meals I found in dumpsters behind restaurants. 3 years I lived like that. And you know what kept me going?" The audience was dead silent. Elena was still on the floor, looking up at Steve. "People," Steve said. "Strangers who helped me. An old lady at a church who gave me $50. A gas station owner who let me use his shower. A comedian who let me open for him when I had nothing. And I made a promise to God. I said, if you get me out of this car, I will help people for the rest of my life. I will use whatever platform you give me to help people. And right now, God is asking me to keep that promise." Steve turned to the producers. "Call the network. Tell them I'm covering the difference." A producer ran onto the stage. "Steve, you can't—" "I'm covering the $20,000, Steve said. "The family gets the full prize. And I'm writing a personal check for another $20,000. That's $40,000 total for Christopher's treatment." The audience exploded. Not polite applause, pandemonium. People were standing, screaming, crying. Elena was sobbing so hard she couldn't breathe. David had his face in his hands. But Steve wasn't done. "Get me a phone," Steve said. Someone handed him a cell phone. "What's the number for Duke?" Steve asked Elena. She stammered it out. Steve dialed. Live, on stage, during a taping. Something that had never happened in 45 years of Family Feud history. The phone rang. Someone answered. "This is Steve Harvey," Steve said. "I'm calling from the Family Feud stage, and I'm looking at a mother who just scored 198 points to save her son's life. I need you to hold a spot in your clinical trial for Christopher Martinez. I'm wiring $40,000 to you today." The person on the other end said something. Steve nodded. "Today," he said again. "I want him in treatment by Monday." Another pause. "Thank you," Steve said. He hung up. The studio fell completely silent for the third time. Steve looked at Elena. "Christopher starts treatment on Monday," he said. "You're going to Duke. It's handled." Elena couldn't stand, couldn't speak. David was holding her up. Christopher ran onto the stage. He didn't understand what was happening, but he knew his mom was crying, and Steve was there, and something big had just happened. "Mama?" Christopher said, his voice small and scared. "Did I hurt him? Did I say something wrong?" Elena grabbed him, held him so tight. "No, baby," she whispered. "No. Mr. Steve just saved your life." But Steve wasn't done. He turned to the Chen family, who were still standing on the other side of the stage. They'd been silent through everything. "I know you folks just lost the game," Steve said, "and I know that's disappointing. But I'm looking at your faces and I see something. You're not disappointed. You're crying too, aren't you?" Michael Chen, the family captain, stepped forward. "Steve," he said, "we have 3 kids. If that was us, if that was our son, we'd want someone to help. We're not upset. We're grateful we got to be here for this." Steve looked at him for a long moment. "Then I'm giving you the $20,000 too," Steve said, "because that's the kind of people you are. Both families win today." The audience lost it. Complete chaos. People were hugging strangers. The crew was crying. The producers had given up trying to control anything. Steve walked to the center of the stage. He looked directly into the camera. "Listen to me," he said. "Everyone watching at home, right now, listen. There are families everywhere dealing with what Elena is dealing with. Medical bills, insurance denials, impossible choices. And I can't help everyone. I wish I could. But I can help this family. And I can tell you this. If you've got something, give something. If you've got time, give time. If you've got love, give love. Because 20 years ago, I was living in a car, and somebody gave me hope. And today, I'm giving it back." The episode aired on April 2nd, 2019. Within 24 hours, the video of Steve's moment with Elena had 47 million views on YouTube. By the end of the week, it was trending on every platform. Hashtag Steve Harvey Miracle became the #1 trending hashtag globally. News outlets from CNN to BBC covered it. The Duke clinical trial was flooded with donations, over $2.3 million in 10 days. The pharmaceutical company behind the immunotherapy treatment announced they'd cover future trial costs for all qualifying patients. No more $20,000 barriers. Christopher Martinez started treatment on Monday, April 22nd, exactly as Steve had promised. 3 months later, Steve Harvey launched the 198 Foundation, named after Elena's Fast Money score. The foundation's mission? Covering the gap between insurance denials and experimental treatments for pediatric cancer patients. In the first year, it raised $8.7 million and helped 73 families. By 2024, that number was 412 families and $34 million. Elena Martinez became the foundation's Director of Family Services. She works full-time helping other parents navigate what she survived. Christopher Martinez responded to treatment. After 6 months, his tumor had shrunk by 60%. After 12 months, it was undetectable. He's now in his 5th year of remission. He just started middle school. He plays soccer. He's a straight-A student. He wants to be a doctor. Every year on March 14th, the anniversary of that Family Feud episode, Christopher writes Steve Harvey a thank you letter. Steve keeps every one. He's got 5 now. He says they remind him why he made that promise in the 1976 Ford Tempo. In a 2021 interview with Oprah, Steve talked about that 30 seconds of silence. "People ask me why I couldn't speak," he said. "I'll tell you why. Because I was watching myself. I was watching my own pain on that stage. Elena on her knees, apologizing to her son for not having enough money to save him. I lived that. Different circumstances, same desperation. And for 30 seconds, I wasn't the host of Family Feud. I was a broke comedian living in a car, wondering if God had forgotten about me. And then I remembered. He hadn't. And he hasn't forgotten about Elena either. That's why I couldn't speak. Because sometimes you have to be silent before you can be used." The Chen family stayed in touch with the Martinez family. They vacation together now. Their kids are friends. Michael Chen says his family talks about that day constantly. "We lost a game show," he said in an interview. "But we won something bigger. We got to witness what it means to show up for people. To see someone else's pain and say, 'I'm here, let me help.' That's the lesson we're teaching our kids. Not that Steve Harvey gave us money. That Steve Harvey saw someone drowning and dove in." Today, Elena Martinez keeps a photo in her office. It's from that day on the Family Feud stage. The moment right after Steve made the call to Duke. Christopher is hugging Steve's leg. Elena is still on the floor, looking up at them both. Steve's hand is on Christopher's head. Everyone is crying. The photo is blurry because the person taking it was crying too. Beneath the photo, Elena has a quote from Steve's speech that day. 5 words she's read 1,000 times. 5 words that saved her son's life. "I'm giving it back." Every night before bed, Christopher asks his mom the same question he asked during those 9 months of waiting. "Mama, when do I go to Duke?" It started as a question rooted in fear. Now it's a joke, a callback, a reminder of what they survived. And every night, Elena gives him the same answer she gave him 5 years ago. Except now, she's not lying. "Soon, baby," she says. "For your checkup. Just a checkup. You're okay now." The quietest moment in Family Feud history lasted 30 seconds. But its echo has lasted 5 years and counting. Because Steve Harvey learned something in that silence. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stop talking. Stop pretending you have all the answers. Stop performing. Just stop. See the person in front of you. see their pain, and then do something about it. That's not hosting. That's not entertainment. That's being human. And on March 14, 2019, 12 million people watched Steve Harvey remember what that meant. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to remember that help can come from the most unexpected places, that 30 seconds of silence can change a life, and that sometimes the smallest gap between success and failure is just the moment before someone decides to care. Hit subscribe to see more stories of people who chose to dive in when they could have walked away.